how to create a seamless loop using Audacity. There's many programs on how to install Audacity. If you don't know how to do that, just Google it. I'm not going to go in that detail and waste your time that way. I'm just going to go straight to the point here. Alright, first thing we need to do is you need to get a sample, and we'll go ahead and get into, let's find, alright, this is a good one here. Big pad. Go ahead and just open up this one here. Just drop it and drag it in there. Minimize that. Alright, so we have, basically you have a fade in and sort of a fade out. And so what I'll do is I'll just basically just play it first and see what it sounds like. You can hit the shift and space key to actually loop it. And we'll go ahead and do that. I'll do shift and space. And space again to stop. Alright, so it doesn't really sound too good. Well, of course, it's not really going to loop that well. And usually what I would do is I'd go in the sampler and create loop markers, but depending on the sampler, it depends on, you know, some samplers, they may not have the best loop settings, and a lot of times it just creates more work in trying to loop it just right. And like, for example, Native Instruments, really hard to find the 0 point. They have like a mechanism in Native Instruments to find the 0 point crossing, and I'll explain what that is here in just a second. And it's just really difficult. So I find that using Audacity to prep the samples before I even import them into Contact or whatever sampler I'm working with just saves me a ton of time. And I can use any sampler out there, and I don't really have to mess with loops anymore. Okay, so my very first step, I want to kind of go over with you just kind of a little bit of a, you know, housekeeping with Audacity here. And the first thing I'll do is I'll go into Edit Preferences. You can do Control P, and I made up some shortcuts here, just kind of get me through here and speed up the process. The very first one I'm going to do is I'll do a fade in, a fade out. And if we go in here, and I've set them to Alt-I for fade in and Alt-O for fade out, O for out and I for in. And in this process here, what I like to do is I like to have everything with keyboard shortcuts. So that way I'm just boom, 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 boom. And I've even created a macro where I just hit that macro and it just, boom, it's done. So that way I can go through a ton of samples in a matter of, you know, 10 or 20 minutes. And it just saves me a ton of time. Now, Audacity is a little quirky with certain things, and I'll explain what's going on there. So the very first thing you want to do is you just want to make sure that you set up your keyboard shortcuts. The very first one I do is I do Alt and N. I just hit it right there and I do Set. And it'll let you know if it's using something or not. And so far I found that these I've been using, it's not in play with Audacity, if that makes sense. The other shortcut that I'm going to be using is, after I do a fade in, is you want to do a 0. And what that does is, if we do type in 0, you just hit Z, and what that will do is it'll take your little guide bar, or whatever you want to call this thing, and it'll actually align it on the 0 point crossing. And I'll show you what that means. Let's go ahead and just get out of this real quick. I think it's escape. Yep. So like right now, if I got it zoomed in really high. So right now I have my bar right here, my play bar, that's what it is. Now I'll hit the Z key. Watch what happens. Boom. Right, it goes right on. It automatically hits the 0 point right there. And that's the 0 point. And what that means is, if we zoom in more, it's where the wave will actually cross the imaginary line here, and that's where you want to make your cuts at. You won't have any issues when you do it that way. The other part of the shortcuts that I want to get to is, after we do that, the 0, and that's automatic, but I did have to add the Alt-0 and the Alt-I for the fade in, fade out. A Shift K is what I'm thinking of, but what it does is it highlights field or everything after the play bar. There we go. Alright, Control Shift K, there it is. Region cursor to track in. So what that will do, and that's automatic too. That's that comes default with whatever this program is called, Audacity. And what they'll do is they'll basically highlight everything from the end. And if you do like a Shift J, it'll go the other way. So just these are just a couple things here. Just kind of take note of Shift J and Shift K. Shift K is the one I use more, but just kind of FYI there. Then the other thing I'll do, here's one that does not come by default. Control Alt I, and it's a split new, clip boundaries, split new. So what that will do is basically wherever you've highlighted it past the bar, and I'll go into detail on how you do these things, but I just want to go over the shortcuts real quick and just let you know that that one is not default. They took it out. So you have to go in and you have to edit that one, which is Control Alt I, and that's what I put in there. It used to be in the older versions of Audacity, but for some reason it's not in there. And you just go in there and set for this one, clip boundaries. And after I do that, it'll drop it down. And then the other thing I like to do is, if I can spell it right, Control Shift Z. And what that'll do is that'll actually move my thing. I made that one up. Now I'll actually align my track up and move my edit down to the beginning of the track, and that's what I need to do. And I've created that one for that. So these are just kind of shortcuts that I've made. And if there's any more that I miss, I'll go back to them. So let's go and cancel out of that. Listen to it, and then after you made your listen, you kind of feel like, all right, I need to make some cuts here. And the other thing that I'm looking out for is I don't want to have some really long ass tail. You know, I want to shorten up my tail a little bit. Like right here, I got a pretty big long tail. This will probably give me a low spot a little bit. So I may cut that one out. I may not. I probably will cut that out because that tail will give me a dip in volume. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just cut it right here. And before I make my cut, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do a 0, make sure it's aligned, and I'm going to do a Shift J, and then I'll go ahead and hit my delete. Alright, so I made my cut right there, and then the other thing I want to do is I want to make my cut over here. So it looks like everything's pretty good right here. So I'm going to, and it's already faded out, but I do want to do is I want to get rid of this right here. So I'll just do something like this, and just hit my 0 key. I'm always hitting my 0 key because I just feel like it just really creates that sample very seamlessly every time you make a cut, before you make a cut. And then I'll just do Shift K, I think, something like that, and I'll hit my delete key and just delete that out. And then the other thing I want to do is I just kind of want to just fade it out a little bit. But before I fade it out, see, I don't use my cursor to do fade out because Audacity just has some weird thing where it will remember. If you say, like, if I just did this like that, and see how there's just this a little tiny bit of space right here, and why fight that, you know? And the thing is Audacity will remember that space. If you make an edit, it will remember it. So let's just do something like this. Hit the 0 key right here. I'm just gonna make a little tiny fade out, and I'll explain why this is important in a second. And then I'll just go ahead and just do like a Shift K again. And then I'll do my, remember I was talking about I had the shortcuts for the fade out, so I'll do Alt O. Perfect. Cut my fade out. Now let's go ahead and just zoom it back in, and we can do a Control E, I believe, and I'll make it, oops, wrong way. Control A, and I think it's Control E. There we go. And that will bring everything back in. You got to Control A to highlight it. After we've got that done, and it looks like we got a little bit right here, and I got a little bit of a fade in here, and I could even do a fade out right here. Probably need to do something like that. So let's just do something like from here to here. So, but before I do that, I'll just do something like this. And this is the long way of doing a sample, and I'll kind of go into it a little bit more detail. 0, and then Control Shift J, not Control. And then we'll just do a little bit of a fade out right here. Looks like we don't need that much. We could do something like right here. Because when I put this one over here, let's kind of just do it like so, like that. All right, and then Shift J, and then do a Alt I for fade in. Perfect. All right, so now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and then I'm going to just find a nice little spot like right here, kind of close, like right here, right before the tail. And my goal here is to take this little spot right here, cut it out, match it up right here, and it should fade right in perfectly and give you a seamless loop. So we'll see what happens here. A lot of times when you get these really busy samples, it just doesn't really work too right. So we'll see what happens. So if I just kind of go out like so, I think, matter of fact, I'm just going to go out right here. And let's see what happens that way. Maybe a little bit more. Let's do that. Do a Z for 0 point, and then you didn't even see it move. Sometimes you won't even see it move, but trust me, it's working. And then we'll do a Shift K. Alright, got it. Now, here's the next shortcut that I talked about earlier, and this is what this is for. This is called Control Alt I, and what this will do is it'll split the region and put it in a new track. Boom, done. Awesome. Now, the next step is I just take my Shift key, hold it down, and hit my down arrow. Cool. And then I talked about that other shortcut that I did, which is called I did Control Shift Z, and that will basically move it down here. And I showed you that earlier. Perfect. Now I'll just do is Control All, Control A, and I'll highlight everything. So what this is doing right here is basically it's taking the tail that I just created, and see how I have that little fade out, because I wanted to have a little bit of a fade out. And I'm going to basically merge it right into the beginning here, and hopefully it'll create this seamless loop. And I'm a little worried because I don't have that much of a fade out going on here. I probably need to have a little bit more of a fade out, so right here, but we'll see what happens. We can always go back and do a Control Z and do an undo if it doesn't really work the way we want it to. But for this tutorial right here, just kind of show you the basic principles of doing this here. So I merged that at the very beginning. So my next step right now is I did a Control A, and I'm just going to just extract the audio into render it into a new audio file, or bounce it out is basically what I'm going to do. And the way it'll bounce is it'll bounce only what is highlighted. And when I told you the other day, is the reason why I'm using key commands for everything, especially when I'm doing that Shift K, is because a lot of times what happens is when you bounce it out, it might catch a little bit of that gray space, and it'll ruin your seamless sample and just won't sample right, and you get those clicks and pops. So you gotta really make sure you're using the Shift K and get it to the very end. There's just no way. It just saves you time, and trying to eye it out and doing it just takes forever and stupid. Alright, the next step here is we're going to do a Control A, and the other thing I wanted to talk about here before we do a bounce out is notice how my bigger file, my longer file, is always at the top. For some reason, I don't know why, when I do a seamless loop here, if my bigger or longer file is at the bottom, it just doesn't loop right. I get clicks and pops. So I always like to make sure that my longer file in time is always at the top. Just FYI. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to go and extract this file out. And it's basically all you do is you do export. Now, here's the thing that's kind of tricky with Alchemy here. One of the things that kind of bugs me about this is you have an export as wave. And if you do that, let's go that right here, you see that right down here it says save type as 16-bit. There's no way to automate that. There's no way to default that. I have to go in here and go pick it every time. However, if you go in here and you do file export as audio, Control Shift E, it'll automatically remember your last saved setting. So that's kind of what I've been doing here. And what's kind of stinks about that is if you go into the tools and if you create a macro, and I've actually done this whole process in a macro, and I could just hit one button and boom, it just goes. I've got this assigned to an actual key command, and it'll go through all these steps that I just did in a matter of a second. However, it cannot do I can put in, like if I put in export, where is it? Export as wave, but it does not let me put in export as audio. And the WAV file, I think it's a bug with Audacity, or maybe they just don't really give a crap. you know, but it ruins your ability to really have a nice way of actually automating this whole process. And this is my only gripe with Audacity, is they just don't really have a great way of um, doing batch things, you know, because what I could do is I could actually write a script and actually have the script open this up and run that macro and do it for like, you know, 100 samples, whatever. But anyhow, that's another day. But I just wanted to point that out there. You do not have the ability to export as audio in this macro. So which kind of sucks, but still, I'm still able to get around it and still be able to do it pretty fast with the macro. So I'll kind of cancel all of that. So we'll just go ahead and just do Control E, Control Shift E, I think. Yep. And that'll export as audio, and that's default key command. And it'll say big pad, blah, 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 you know, and I could just name it. I do want to do is I want to keep my key name at the end. For some reason, I always like to keep my key name at the end. And I will also put in something here. I'll put looped, and I'll put in stereo looped. Perfect, something like that. So that way I know right ahead what it is. The other stuff, you know, the 24-bit, you know, is it 44.1? I can get that at my next step. So I go ahead and I just, you know, make sure I'm in the right folder too. So what was it? It was big pad. There it is. All right. Hit save. It'll come up with this metadata tags. And I've already set up a template. Kind of have my thing in here. And I'll just go in here and just say, you know, big pad. And then what was it? Stereo looped. And I usually put the synth that I sampled it from in here. But this one, I don't really remember what I sampled it from. So I'll just kind of just maybe put unknown. Say synth unknown. That's just kind of my way of keeping track of things. Track number, I just kind of leave that unless if I have like a bunch of different loop. Normally I'll organize them by key on piano. So what that means is like the lowest key will be number 1, and the highest key, like the 88 key, will be like number 88 of the track number. The year 2018. The ambient, that's a genre, but it could be any genre. You could just put in EDM because, you know, it's just a pad. So it doesn't really matter. Website, and then my key. This is important here. I just kind of like to have this information. So this one's custom. This one's custom, and what you do is you just do add, and it'll add another thing right there. I'm gonna do remove. So I don't know. I've kind of put it a different custom tag, but it's just at least that way I can get into Audacity, and at least Audacity will let me know, you know, what it is or whatever. You know, that way I keep track of the bit level and the key, and that's how I do it. And just hit save. Okay, it did save, and then what I'll do is I'll just open up another instance of Audacity. I'll say, alright, so then I'll go ahead and I'll just do Control Shift I, and that will do is that'll actually import, open up the import window, and if we go in pads, and where we say it was, big pad, where we saved it as, right there, that's the new one, and you can see it's kind of cool because it'll give me the you know, at least some information about in the tag information on your Windows 10, especially how you have it open up. So I like that. I like the information right there. So it's at A#2. Let's hit open it up. So cool. So now we have this stop right here and the stop over here. Now I'm a little worried about this part right here because I said that I didn't have much of a fade going on right here. So we'll kind of see what's going on. So it's kind of looks a little thick right here, but we'll just play it out. We'll see what happens. Let's do shift and space to see if it's seamless. So as you heard that, there was a little bit of a something right here, a big boost in volume, and as I was actually expecting that to happen. But you can hear that the loop is seamless. It really is. It's just a little bit of jump of volume where I had that tail. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to go ahead and just hit Alt X. That's another key command that I kind of forgot to tell you about. Let's do Control P. And if we go in here and just do key X, Alt X, track close, focus track. So I've already assigned that one, and what that will do is actually close this track out. Let's do Alt X, and just kind of clears it out, but keeps it open. Now let's go back over this other one right here, and then what we're going to do is we're just going to basically do Control Z and bring that up. And what we need to do is just kind of make sure that something like so. We're just going to do a little bit longer of a tail, so like right here, maybe right here, like that. Yeah, that'll work. Give it about a half second, maybe a quarter second of a tail right here, and just do Z, and then do Shift J, and then Control I. No, Alt I. I'm sorry. That's what I forgot. So many key commands I have to remember. And Control I, Alt I for fade in, and then do one right here. So we'll say that's 1, 2, 3, 3 tick marks. So if we go over here, 1, 2, 3, let's do Z. All right, someone's calling for dinner. I'd hit Z and then Control K, and then Alt O for fade out. And then while I'm there, I'm not going to move anything. I already did my Z. And check this out. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do a Control Alt I for my next one. And I'll bring it down and Shift down arrow will highlight it down. And then Control Shift Z, which is my other custom key command. Bring it over there, Control A. And then you can see right now how this will be really fast. And then Control Shift E, which was my next one. Bring it up and name that. So we'll just do this, call this number 2 or something. I can rename it later. Alright, hit save. And it's already everything. Oh, I didn't. For some reason, it does not want to keep the same name. Alright, whatever. Let's do big pad. I said it was synth unknown, but whatever. Blah. And EDM. Okay, the rest is good. Okay. And you can go in your settings. If you don't want to do that, you can make it faster. Like some of the bigger sample sets I have, like I might have 70 keys in there, I'll go ahead and I just disable that from prompting every time. And you just do that by going to Control Key. And I believe it's in export or something like that. It's this one right here, import export, show meta tags, and you just uncheck that and it won't prompt you anymore. So I've already exported it out, and let's go ahead and go into the other one right here and just do Control Shift I and just kind of import in the new one and see if that one works better. Alright, Shift space. There's a little bit of a duck right there. It's not perfect as far as totally seamless. What I could probably do is I could. The thing is, you really have to get your beginning merged in with the front. A lot of, I could even do something where I can maybe do a really long fade out and a long fade in, and that might help too. So you just kind of have to really watch your fades and make sure your fades, but what is happening is here. But there was a little bit of a duck, and I could fix that. Usually what I might do is I might go in and just kind of, let's say like, if we do, what was it? I had a key command for it, but I kind of forgot it. But it's basically what you do is you do the compressor. Oh, I gotta Control A, and then I thought it was like Alt C or something. Nope, it was Control Alt C. That's my key command. So it's Control-Alt-C. And the setting I have for this is basically it's no threshold. Noise floor, I think that's default. Ratio is 10:1. It's just totally bricked out. And then attack time is nothing. Release time is barely nothing. And then I just make sure that is checked right there. Makeup gain. And what I'll do is I'll just go like that. And what I'll do is just basically raise up. And if you have any dips in volumes or something like that. Now, the only bad thing about when you do this, it sometimes will mess up your 0 point. I don't know why, but it'll cause clicks. And sometimes it'll just, so let's go ahead and just give it a try and see if it worked this time. So you heard that right there. It does, whenever you use that compressor thing, it does mess up your 0 point. So what did it do? So if we go in here to the end, like here, I think what it does is it just moves it or something. I'm not really sure what it does, but it's just something there that it just does when that compressor hits. I think it's good enough right now, even before it, because what will happen is I'll just put this in a synthesizer and it'll be just fine. Really, that little dip in audio, I can correct it with the attack. So like if I make a long attack and then I loop it and I create my loop points, the attack will be just fine. So I'll put a little attack in there so you won't even notice it. Or I might do a compressor afterwards. But anyways, that's how you make a seamless loop in Audacity. Now the cool thing is I have a new sampler that I'm working with. It's called Grace, and what I did is I created some new samples, and I'll go into detail about this on my next video. And basically what it is, okay, so the cool thing is I've created these seamless loops and I've imported in this new sampler. It's a free sampler and it's from a company called One Small Clue, and created 4 samples. And if we go into sample map, you could see that, you know, I've got them separated by groups, and it's pretty cool. And I'll do this on the next video, and then I also got a little bit of something, but I made a nice little pad out of it, and it was just through this whole process of creating some loops. And if we go in here and we play it, I got a little bit of reverb. I got a free reverb plug-in right here by Tao. They make some great plugins and they're free. I'm kind of doing this thing where I'm testing out free plugins, VST plugins, and Reaper, and I'm liking it. There's some issues, but I'll go into them later on. If you like this video, please give me a big fat thumbs up, and hopefully enjoy this and make some great samples. Remember, my friends, big groovy.